I'm Janet on occasion, and today playing another Total War Warhammer campaign lore play. So, obviously you're going to be chatting about the lore. So, a few things I want to cover, but first I just want to say the next, minute is just going to be me trying to find trade deals and checking to see if anyone will want to confederate with me. But, no one wants to be friends with me. But I do get some trade deals and things, so that's all good. So, that's going to happen. Because at this point, you know, coming of chaos, it's looming, trying to get some allies, right? Karl Franz always on the lookout for chaos. So you know, he'd have a bit of an idea that things were stirring. So that's what I'm going with. So yeah, cool. So let's get to it. So I did mention in a previous episode that I had the 8th edition Empire battle book in the post, because I don't actually have all the 8th edition books. But, you know, thought should remedy that, so I've been ordering them as soon as they're less than, like, 75 quid. I mean, seriously, what the hell? Anyway, so, yeah, so I want to talk about Volkmar the Grim, because we've been on campaign with him for ages, and I haven't been able to talk about it properly. So, but he doesn't have an entry. He does have an entry in here, so I want to go over it. Because it's about time, you know? Basically, we've taken Sylvania. That's one of his biggest gripes, the fact that, you know, Sylvania is this accursed land. So, yeah, so we need to talk about him. So, Volkmar the Grim, or Volkmar the Grim. Bless him. The Grand Theogenist. So, Volkmar the Grim is the head of the cult of Sigmar, and the most powerful religious leader in the Empire. He is a pious and foreboding man who is utterly devoted to the destruction of chaos in all its forms. When the Grand Theogenist accompanies an army into battle, he typically rides atop the resplendent war altar of Sigmar, inspiring the soldiers around him to great acts of heroism, as he strikes the followers of chaos down with powerful blows and words of divine force. Volkmar is a holy terror on the battlefield, a man who fights with the fury of Sigmar himself. It is said that Volkmar's soul was forged of steel, and he fights with the malign influence of chaos with every fibre of his being. And there's actually a lovely little quote here from a preceptor of the Righteous Lance. Preceptor being a rank of knight, a very high up rank actually. So cool dude. It's Sir Albrecht Waldorf. He says, Volkmar, just look at him. He never wavers and never yields. Some say he never even sleeps. Everything about him is bent to that one great task of holding back the darkness. He can't do it alone, but then again, he doesn't need to, for his sheer resolve inspires men like us to greatness. Which is pretty cool. So, inspiring guy. So, back onto the core of it. So, though possessed of a warrior's soul, Volkmar the Grim is a wise man who knows that chaos cannot be defeated with strength of arms alone. The Grand Theogenist is convinced that the answer to truly ending the threat from the north lies buried in the archives of the Empire's vaults of ancient scrolls and holy scriptures. For days at a time, the Grand Theogenist locks himself in the secret repositories filled with tomes of forbidden lore, in search of an answer to ending the dark menace of chaos. Such a task is epic in the extreme, and so far the Grand Theogenist has gathered together only a few fragments and scraps of pertinent knowledge. However, what Volkmar has learnt speaks of a great prophecy. A final battle between good and evil that will either see the threat of the chaos crushed forever, or the Empire and the entire world destroyed in a tide of flame and bloodshed. As Grand Theogenist, Volkmar is one of the most powerful men in the Empire, one of Karl Franz's staunchest allies and a wise counsellor. Even though Volkmar is one of the sternest adherents to the cult of Sigmar's teachings, political rivals and malicious rumour-mongers have, in recent years, cast doubts upon his devotion to the ideals of the Empire's warrior god. The Grand Theogenist doesn't waste time by trying to quash rumours or defend against such gossip, content simply to let his actions within his holy order and on the battlefield speak for themselves. None who have witnessed Volkmar in battle ever have reason to doubt his devotion again. So, pretty cool. So, also, I want to talk about his magic items, because he's got them in the game, and so, you know, we've got to talk about them, because it's cool, right? Because obviously we always see him with that big, you know, bird emblazoned on his chest. That's the Jade Griffin. So, this talisman is carved from enchanted jade, and is said to have been blessed by Magnus the Pious himself, who defeated one of the... Yeah, he sort of rallied the Empire to fight in the second or third War of Chaos. It was one of the Wars of Chaos, the most recent one. Anyway, the Jade Griffin hangs upon the Grand Theogenist's chest, glowing with a green inner light that suffuses Volkmar with regenerative powers. And he's also got the Staff of Command, which is basically what all Grand Theogenists have. Because, well, they inherit it, basically. It's passed down from Grand Theogenist to the next Grand Theogenist. Them being, you know, basically Battle Pope, right? They're the Battle Popes. You know, top man for that religion. Besides, I guess, Sigmar, or God, or whatever, you know. Anyway, so the Staff of Command. This staff is the Grand Theogenist's badge of office. It draws magical power from the War Altar of Sigmar and channels it into the Grand Theogenist's aging limbs, suffusing them with strength. And so, I mean, I think that gives you a good idea about, you know, Volkmar. Very devout dude. But also, I just recruited Balthasar. So we're definitely going to talk about Balthasar Gelt. But first, I want to mention, I made peace with the vampire counts, you might have seen. In my mind, that's not actually me agreeing to make peace with them. In terms of doing the roleplay here, is the fact that I've, you know, pushed them into the mountains. And, you know, that's where they'll dwell, sort of think, oh yeah, we're safe now, we've fought them off. Because, you know, it's just a classic vampire thing. People never, you know, never realise they're still going. And so I want to continue that, so I want them to still be a threat on the map. But, you know, just not at war with me, because we're not actively, you know, at war. Because I've chased them into mountains, and they're scheming. So I wanted to, you know, add a bit of flavour there. So that's what I reckon is happening, because Manfred wouldn't just fight a war like this, you know. He'd go, oh, okay, we lost, you know, Sylvania's gone, right, let's scheme. So that's how I'm playing it. So yeah, just in case you guys thought it was really weird that I just had a peace treaty with the vampire counts, because it seemed to add a character to ever have peace with them, you know. But that's why. So okay, so let's talk about Balthasar Gelt, because he's a pretty cool dude. So Balthasar Gelt came to Altdorf from the city of Marienburg, having bought passage on a merchant ship with gold that he had transmuted from lead ingots. He left the seaport for the colleges of magic before the effects wore off, and now rumours abound that the swindled sea captain has placed a rich bounty on Balthasar's head, though few have dared to attempt to collect it. The transmutation of common artefacts into precious metal has always fascinated Balthasar. Driven by his obsession, he spent many years combining his knowledge of alchemy, learnt in far-off lands, with the magical law of metal. Balthasar's fierce intelligence lent him a greater understanding of this branch of magic than any of his fellow students or tutors, and he rose quickly through the ranks of the Gold Order. Within a mere decade, Balthasar had become the Patriarch of the Golden College, the youngest wizard to ever hold the title. Balthasar's research into new formulations of black powder even made him popular with the Imperial Engineers School, an organisation that often dismisses magic as superstitious nonsense. However, during these studies, a freak explosion almost ended Balthasar's quest for knowledge forever. Somehow, he survived, and from that day he has only ever been seen swathed in shimmering metallic robes and wearing a golden face mask. Some say that that beneath his mask, his skin is turned to pure gold. Others whisper that he is horribly disfigured, though the truth of the matter is known only to Balthasar. One thing is certain, the accident only furthered his will to succeed, and this determination increased his powers to new heights. After defeating Thyrus, Gorman of the Bright Order in a ritual magical duel, Balthasar became Supreme Patriarch of the Colleges of Magic, replacing the long-standing prominence of fire with that of metal. Since that day, the new Supreme Patriarch has appeared on many battlefields, heartening the Emperor's armies as he soars overhead on his Pegasus. With a single gesture, Balthasar Gelt can transform his enemies into lifeless golden statues, or turn their bones into molten iron. With such power at his command, Balthasar has secured victory for the Empire on numerous occasions. That's really not surprising, is it? So, a few things there. Obviously, we spoke about the law of metal, and we haven't spoken about the law of metal, generally. And, because we haven't spoken about really any of the Colleges of Magic, apart from the Grey Order, I think. So, we should do that. And also, I want to talk about this magical duel he had, because that's a thing. So we're going to talk about that, because it's cool. But I quickly actually want to address his magical items, like I did with Volkmar. So first off, there's the Amulet of See Gold. So this ancient elven heirloom was unearthed by Balthasar Gelt in distant Estalia. It glows with protective energies that become increasingly more powerful in the presence of evil sorcery. He's also got the Cloak of Molten Metal. This mystic robe creates a shimmering series of images that perfectly match Balthasar's appearance. These images are forever rotating in a dazzling whirlwind of iridescent colours, masking the Patriarch's true battlefield position, even to the most eagle-eyed marksman. And also he's got the Staff of Volans. So, or Volans, or Volans? I don't know. Volans, I reckon. This staff belonged to Volans, whatever. The first Supreme Patriarch of the Colleges of Magic, who was taught by Teclis of Ulthuan during the Great War against Chaos, and it has been the symbol of office of the Supreme Patriarch ever since. It allows the Patriarch to bend the winds of magic more easily to his will, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that staff actually gives him a +2 bonus on all attempts to cast spells. Yeah, that's right. Pretty sexy. So actually, I said I was going to talk about the Colleges of Magic, but I've changed my mind. That's right. I can do that, because I make the content. I'm never going to do that again. So yeah, I'm actually going to do, I think the next episode is going to be, I'm just going to talk about all the Colleges of Magic, because that stuff's cool. I think it needs, you know, it needs its own episode, talk about the Colleges of Magic. I don't want to just throw it in here. I'll probably reiterate stuff about the Grey Order as well. And, you know, it might even spread a couple of episodes. But yeah, there's a lot to talk about the colleges, and it's a very important thing, so I'd rather not do it piecemeal. So I'll be doing that in the next one. So yeah, look forward to that. So next on the agenda is another thing that I failed to talk about in a lot of vampire stuff. In a lot of vampire episodes. It's the Strigoi. Because obviously, you know, we did fight a Strigoi Ghoul King at one point. And I didn't tell you what the heck that thing was. So I think it's about time we did that. So yeah, let's do that. So when the so you've got to just sort of assume that there's a story before this, because yeah, I'm reading from the I want to say 6th edition. I reckon it's 6th edition. 6th edition Vampire Counts book, and it sort of goes into a lot of the history, but it sort of talks about the birth of all of the vampires. And then the individual sort of, you know, sort of types that then went off and did their own thing and became what they are now. So you just kind of assume at this point all the vampires have been created and they've been split up. They've all escaped places. So yeah, so just assume that, right? So okay, when the vampire lords of old escaped the destruction of Lamia and fled north, Usharan, the Lord of Masks, was among them. A most powerful and proud vampire lord, he soon challenged the other lords for supremacy. However, they resisted him and decided that nobody should rule over them anymore. They preferred to go further north and then divide, free to follow their own different paths to damnation. Usharan was furious. He spitefully rejected them, cursed them all, and then left. He guided his few remaining minions to the west, towards a small kingdom of men. Strigos was the name of this kingdom. Or Strigoi, probably. I can say Strigoi. Strigoi was the name of this kingdom, in the western foothills of the World's Edge Mountains, where the Blind River reaches the plains. The capital of this realm was the great walled city of Morkane, which can be found on some ancient Imperial maps under the name of Morkheim. In a few centuries, the children of the Lord of Masks were holding many positions of importance in the city, and Usharan eventually took over the kingdom and ruled over the Strigoi for many centuries thereafter. He was worshipped as a divinity by his human subjects in a way that was reminiscent of the ancient cult of blood in Lamia. A few men, chosen from amongst the nobility, were given eternal life as vampires, and they formed Usharan's closest ministers and the high priest of his cult. Once more, human sacrifices were consumed moonless nights, but wisely, Usharan and his priests always chose their victims from among captured enemies, slaves and criminals, so that the people of Strigoi never felt threatened by their terrible masters. So, you know, very diplomatic there. But to rule in peace was not to be the final destiny of this line of vampires. It was when the armies of Strigoi were engaged in the north of the kingdom, fighting off a raid from one of the neighbouring human kingdoms, that disaster struck. Out of the World's Edge Mountains erupted a huge greenskin war. The ravening orcs engulfed the rich plains of Strigoi, annihilated the border patrols, and soon laid siege to Morkane itself. When news of the attack reached Usharan, who was leading his army in the north, he immediately turned back to defend his capital. At the Battle of the Plain of Dust, the already depleted army of Strigoi clashed with the uncountable orcs beneath the walls of the city. After a long and bloody fight, the Strigoi were defeated and retreated in desperation towards the city walls. When the powerful orc shaman who was leading the horde saw that the gates of the city had been opened to allow the remnants of the routed army into the city, he seized the moment and launched an all-out attack against the gate defences. A massive orc chieftain and the shaman, both mounted on great wyverns, fell on the beleaguered humans at the city entrance. At these gates the fate of Morkane was to be decided, for it was there that Usharan decided to make his last stand. The duel between the orcs and the vampire lord was epic, but eventually the undead noble succumbed to the mighty powers of the shaman and was destroyed. His dying scream is still said to echo at night in the sinister ruins of the great city of Morkane. Then the orcs turned on the capital and razed it to the ground, butchering or enslaving all the population. This once proud kingdom was completely wiped from history, and now the area that occupied goes under the new name of the Badlands. And you all know the Badlands? That's where all the orcs are. So, the few survivors who escaped the orcs' devastation are now a scattered nomadic people, known as Strigoi. Travelling through the human kingdoms in small caravans and living off expediences, their myths and legends still remember the Golden Age, when the Undying King was reigning over a rich and powerful Strigoi, and they prophesied that one day he will return and guide his people to reclaim their ancient land and rebuild its splendour. Not all the Strigoi vampires were destroyed with Osharan. Some survived and fled to the human kingdoms in the north. In need of help, they searched for others of their kind, and eventually found them in the forests of Sylvania. But the proud Count von Karstein still remembered the spiteful arrogance of Osharan, and turned on his minions, hunting them down like animals in the woods. After that episode of bloody betrayal, the few remaining Strigoi scattered across the old world. Whenever they met vampires of different lines, they received the same treatment they had endured from the von Karsteins. Soon the Strigoi vampires had to hide from the wrath of their own kin, and turned to a life of scavenging at the borders of the human society. From the darkness of gutters, woods and abandoned buildings, they would spy on the Lamian and von Karstein vampires at the balls and banquets of the aristocracy. Their beauty, nobility and wealth reminded the miserable Strigoi of what they had lost, and hatred and envy started to devour their minds. They began to feel the same towards their martial blood dragons and powerful necrarchs, who regarded the Strigoi respectfully as a challenging enemy to slay in a duel, or as an interesting specimen to dissect in their laboratories. The Strigoi slowly transformed into desperate creatures, hated both by the living and by the other vampires. In their desolation, many of them lost their minds completely and became solitary, pathetic creatures, afraid of feeding on humans for fear of attracting the attention of the witch hunters, or, even worse, of other vampires. For this reason, they hid in graveyards, digging out recently buried corpses to drink their cold blood, and hiding during the day in the dank crypts and gutters near their feeding ground. Their physical appearance soon started to reflect their miserable condition, as they turned into hunched, grotesque monstrosities. The more bestial traits of their race soon prevailed and eradicated any semblance of human appearance. Even if most of them have, to some degree, lost their minds, they still possess many of the innate powers that all vampires have. Their authority over the living dead and the myriad creatures of the night is still strong. They have not lost the power to raise the dead from their slumber and bind them to their will, but they do so in their own instinctual way. Even if their magic is less subtle than the more refined forms of necromancy practiced by the other vampires, it is no less powerful. Packs of flesh-eating ghouls are attracted to these lonely creatures, and often form grotesque courts around them. Grave robbers and those vile men who gather on battlefields to steal from the bodies of the fallen have learned all too well that they must do their deeds before nightfall, and then leave. With darkness, different kinds of scavengers always fall on those places of death. Swarms of ghouls led by massive, fast and deadly night hunters, Strigoi vampires. It is a little wonder that the peoples of the old world refer to the Strigoi as the Ghoul Kings. The same superstitious people accuse the wandering Strigoi of being in contact with these dangerous creatures, of worshipping and serving them. It is said that the nomads sometimes kidnap children to offer them to the Ghoul Kings in a parody of the rituals of ancient Strigoi. Others assure that the Strigoi help the Strigoi vampires to move from town to town in their caravans, contributing to spread this evil plague. These rumours, usually completely false, have cost the Strigoi dearly, since they are often persecuted, rejected and killed for no other reason than this reputation. Strigoi vampires are rare and are often found mostly in the southern provinces of the Empire, in Telea and the Border Princes. They seem to be somehow attracted towards the Badlands, towards Strigoi of old. At times, powerful Strigoi vampires raise a vast army of the living dead around themselves and push south in a desperate attempt to recreate the kingdom they once had and lost. They have always been stopped, so far. So I'm moving on to the 8th edition Vampire Count rulebook, and it does actually have a entry for Strigoi Ghoul Kings, but actually it's just a shortened version of what I just read. A lot of it is word for word, which is a bit silly, but oh well. Actually there's a few differences, but it's pretty much the same. It mentions the Tomb Kings in this one, slightly, but it's kind of, yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to talk about the Crypt Ghouls. As well, because they're the ones that sort of gather around the Ghoul Kings, and I rarely talk about just units in general, really. So I'm going to talk about the Crypt Ghouls because I find them fun. Run around eating bodies. So, Crypt Ghouls are ugly stooping creatures with only a vestigial sense of reason. Their skin is sallow and filthy, their eyes are bestial and insane, and their snarling lips reveal sharp-pointed teeth in slavering mouths. Dressed only in the rags they pull from their victims, the Crypt Ghouls carry weapons that have been picked up or have crudely fashioned from the remains of their unwholesome meals. These skulking fiends do not need such implements to kill, however, for they have long claws sufficient for their needs. These claws are encrusted with grave filth and decaying meat. Those that take even the slightest scratch from their talons can die from unnaturally potent infections that spread through the victim's body. In addition, their constant diet for rot-fouled meat confers a sinewy and unwholesome resilience. So that explains the poison attacks, you know. Though not truly undead, Crypt Ghouls unconsciously feel the dark magic that surrounds the most powerful undead lords and are drawn inexorably towards it. Once their presence is betrayed, their newfound master quickly dominates their weak and willing minds. Though they will lope into battle at the behest of their master, Crypt Ghouls, and even their ghastly pack leaders, are cowardly creatures that will slink away from combat if their prey seems to be fighting back with any real determination. This innate cowardice can be overcome by the mental command from their vampiric masters, for those ghouls who have fled can be coerced back to the front lines with the law of dark magic. So what I love about these guys is they're not dead. Which is kind of rare in a Vampire Count's army. Pretty damn unique. But yeah, they're just horrible creatures that feast on the dead. So where you find necromancers, you're going to find Crypt Ghouls, you know. So I think that's pretty cool. So it makes them stand out a bit. They're just horrible flesh-eating creatures. So anyway, the first ghouls were the descendants of the insane and evil-hearted cannibals of the far south. Men who ate the flesh of their dead in gory rituals. These primitive corpse-eaters lived upon the shores of the Sour Sea, drawn to dwell under the looming, freezing shadow of Nagashizar. The tribes worshipped the great necromancer and frequently partook of the dark feast. They would gorge themselves on the flesh of their own, and, generation by generation, they were driven mad by their own loathsome practices. Now, these devolved humanoids roam the desolation of Nagash, preying on travellers in their search for fresh meat. Even in the enlightened era of Imperial Karl Franz, there are tales of cannibalism within the borders of the Empire. During times of pestilence and famine, the desperate and the depraved take to eating human flesh to stay alive. The stories tell that isolated farms and sometimes even whole villages have devolved to this vile state. Some even claim the practice has become customary rather than necessary. During the ghoul swarms of 2512, when the crops failed for the third year running, the knightly orders of Stirland were employed en masse to investigate the borders of their barren realm. The full-scale battle between the brightly clad soldiery of the Elector Count and the ravenous blotch-skinned hordes of the afflicted villagers has not been easily forgotten. Their fields and shabby hamlets were burned to the ground, but the memory of their foulness lingers on. Literally driven underground by their persecutors, these cannibals and their mutant offspring hide in catacombs and mausoleums. There the Crypt Ghouls devour the carcasses of nobles, or take to living in the graveyards of the poor, where they feed on peasant corpses. The priests of Moor do what they can to protect their holy gardens against the encroachments of Crypt Ghouls, but many of the old world's graveyards and cemeteries date back 1,000 years or more, and beneath them are a labyrinth of subterranean chambers and tunnels. On occasion, the Brotherhood of Moor will employ a professional witch hunter to sweep the catacombs with sword and fire. As time passes though, the Crypt Ghouls return to eat the dead, and prey upon the isolated mourners and priests. Other colonies of ghoulish fiends creep through the years undiscovered. A small army of these foul verminous creatures dwell within the great burial crypts of the hills around Mousillon, and they sweep down into the cursed city every time the Chaos Moon is full. Even in times of relative peace, the city guard are always on watch and well armed, and never enter the mausoleums and sepulchres of Mousillon cemeteries, except in bands of at least a dozen men. So, yeah, pretty crazy. One thing is the Knights of Moor there. The Brotherhood of Moor, the Cult of Moor, the Moorite priests. That whole thing is, it's the god of death, is Moor. So, they tend to the graveyards. So all the cemeteries in the Empire are known as Gardens of Moor. And which I think is quite sort of sweet, really, because they are kind of gardens, because, people bring flowers and stuff like that, it's well tended to, and I think that's a very just poetic way of saying something, calling a cemetery a garden. I think that's really cool. That's just semantics. But yeah, so that's what they're talking about there. So it's the priests of Moor who tend to these cemeteries and make sure that, you know, the dead they bury can't come back as zombies or, you know, or get feasted on by crypt ghouls. It's all their job to keep them, you know, keep the dead safe. Well, living safe from the dead as well. So yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool. So yeah, I enjoy good crypt ghoul. They're fun. So you might have noticed that Carroburg is now in the hands of Nordland. It was it Skulltakers? I forget. It's one of the one of the random nomad orc tribes. Had taken it over, and I was poised to take it from them. But then Nordland swooped in and got there first, which is really annoying, because that'd be a really nice sort of, you know, sort of underhand way of stealing land from, you know, from Midland, out from under their nose. And the reason why it'd be so underhand and great is because, well, Carroburg, well, I'm going to talk to you about Carroburg and why I want it. Once the seat of the Teutogen Kings and later the Imperial capital under the Drakwold Emperors, Carroburg is the chief town of Western Middenland. Built on the steep slopes that rise from the Reich's east bank, Carroburg is a maze of twisting streets and stairs. Since water and waste travel downhill, the more well-off of the residents of the neighbourhood are, the higher up the hill they will be. This makes the businesses of the shoe and boot cleaners in the docks district very brisk indeed. Why isn't there a harbour there in Total War? It is so annoying not being able to trade with Middenland when you're the Reichland. It makes no sense. Like, the land overlaps, for God's sake. Anyway, enough about that. See, there should be a road. Just put a road there, you know? Just tell the game there's a road there. It makes a difference. Anyway, at the top of the city sit two grand palaces. The larger is the residence of the elect Count of Middenheim and Middenland, held ready for his occasional visits. It is an ancient mansion, tall with narrow windows and no entrances to the residence on the ground floor. Though this has been true since the house was built, Carroburgers think the Graf likes it because it is harder for an angry mob to storm, and the mob has been angry since the imposition of the penny on the pound tax, which takes an extra penny for each pound of cargo brought into the port. So, when I first read this, actually, I thought pound as in, you know, sterling, right? You know, the Great British Pound. That was my thought process there, penny on the pound. So I was thinking, like, that's 1% tax? That's nothing. That does not seem completely outrageous. But then in medieval times, there was almost no tax, so that might seem unreasonable. But no, it's actually per pound of cargo. So depending on what the cargo is, that could be actually nothing or a lot, who knows. So that's kind of interesting. So ostensibly levied to raise money for the repair of the distant Middenheim's defences. Cynics among the public think it is going straight to the coffers of the Ulrich. Currently, the house is occupied by the Graf's heir, Baron Wolfram von Todbringer. The public has seen little of him since his arrival. Word has it that his health is weak, and the Graf sent him here to keep him away from the fighting. The other palace, and... oh yeah, I'm just joining a war there. Classic. The other palace is that of the Duke Leopold von Bildhofen, the ruler of Carroburg under the Graf. The von Bildhofen family is an ancient one, tracing its roots back to the great families of the Drakwold, and even claiming the Emperor Magnus the Pious as a relative. Duke Leopold is popular in the region, as he is a regular donor to the temples and charities, and openly supports the town's charter as the wave for the future, an idea what appalls his noble cousins. Some see him as a defender of Western interest in the court of Middenheim. Like many towns away from the fighting, Carroburg has suffered an influx of refugees from the east. Most live in makeshift camps outside the city walls, or hovels built of wood in the town's alleys. The influx has put strain on the area's resources, and crime is becoming a problem for both the Carroburgers and the refugees, with each blaming the other. Town authorities have striven to keep the peace so far, but, should things worsen, riots may not be far off. So, obviously that's not really a problem here, because the Storm of Chaos hasn't happened yet, and I'm reading from the 2nd edition Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay book, Sigmar's Heirs, which assumes that Storm of Chaos has happened. But Chaos hasn't arrived yet. But, you know, Carroburg is not a huge place. That's the thing. Let's see, what's the population? Carroburg. Oh, actually, 12,000 people live in Carroburg. That's 3,000 less than Middenheim. That's actually, yeah, that's pretty sizable. I wonder it used to be the capital. But yeah, so quite a big place, apparently. My bad. I must have got my wires crossed with somewhere else. But yeah, so it's an important place, and I want it. I definitely want it. But yeah, reading about Carroburg here though, that population of 12,000, it's actually normally 8,000. 4,000 of them are refugees, so that's an extra 50% people living there, so no wonder it's strained. That is absolutely insane. And also, it trades in trade, glass, and pottery. So yeah, quite a wealthy place. So very cool, very cool. It is only a town though. It's not seen as a city. So that's something else to consider. So yeah, fun. And of course, Carroburg is also home to the Carroburg Greatswords. So the Carroburg Greatswords, I'm reading from 8th edition Empire rulebook again. The Carroburg Greatswords are one of the most famous regiments in the Empire, with tales of their valour and ruthlessness told from Marienburg to Talabheim. The regiment earned its bloody reputation after the siege of Carroburg in 1865, where its soldiers successfully defended the walls of the city against the Count of Midland's vast army. I'm pretty sure it was actually part of the Reichland when this was going on. Despite the horrific casualties and many wounds they suffered during the battle, the Greatswords fought on resolutely, and by end battle, their white Reichland uniforms were drenched in blood. From that moment onwards, the Carroburg Greatswords have worn dark red uniforms in remembrance of that bloody battle. So very cool. Do love a good Greatsword. And yeah, this is home to the most famous bunch of Greatswords. So I really want it. I really want Carroburg, okay? I can't stress to you how much I want to take Carroburg. But also, Midland in general is quite cool. So, I don't know, maybe... But no, that wouldn't be very lore-friendly to invade them. So maybe I won't bother. Because it's just... I mean, I'm not going to go to war with Midland. I know Franz and Todbringer have got a bit of a dispute going. Like, you know, Boris wanted to be the Emperor, but, you know, Karl won the vote. It's, you know, it's fickle. It'd be silly of me to sort of break the law there, just so I have an excuse to talk about Midland. I mean, I could probably do like a deal or something, right? I'm sure there's something I can do to let me talk about Midland without the need for bloodshed, right? Oh, you know what? Actually, I think I'll just declare war on them, because I mean, you know, well, I mean, it's Nordland. I go to war with Nordland because they shouldn't be there. They shouldn't be in Carroburg. It's not theirs. So I'm just upholding the law here, making sure that the elect counts aren't just nicking each other's land all the time. And that belongs to Boris, so I'm gonna go attack. I'm gonna go to war with Nordland, and which is, you know, completely law friendly. I'm making sure my elect counts don't get silly. But what, Midland are joining them? Oh well, that's been a huge misunderstanding. I guess I'm just gonna have to go to war with them and conquer Midland in this campaign. Oh fiddlesticks. So yeah, guys, I know this is silly. This isn't very law friendly, and this is supposed to be, you know, a law play. But yeah, I want to talk about Midland, and they're never going to confederate with me. So I'm just going to conquer them for the sake of yeah, of learning, to be a learning experience, even if it is incredibly unlaw friendly. Do remember that this wouldn't be happening. Franz and Boris, they might not see eye to eye with a lot of things, but he would not declare war on Midland. That would be mental. And there we go, run out of VT. So, yeah, so it's not law friendly, so sorry about that, but also we get to talk about Midland, and Midland's awesome. So, we get to talk about that. I actually have some models of the Knights of the White Wolf, which aren't in the game, and they should be. They absolutely should be, hopefully if Midland ever gets fleshed out. Anyway, so, yeah, so that's going to be the thing. Although, actually, if they do the Norskins, they might do Midland as well, because they're always invading the north. No, I don't know, it's just a pipe dream. I don't want to get your hopes up. I don't know anything, but still. So guys, if you enjoyed this video, please do comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode where we talk about Midland, which will be great fun. So, and possibly also more about Manfred von Carstein that I kept promising and never did, because I'm hoping he'll come back, which would actually be, you know, kind of, well, it'd be law friendly, and it would be a good way to talk about him, because yeah, the next bit of his narrative is him coming back, so that would be perfect. So I do want to replicate that to some extent, so hopefully I'll attack and we can talk more about him, but otherwise we'll just be talking about Midland. Anyway, I've prattled on long enough. So, guys, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good day, guys.